In the early morning of February 26, 2013, a group of tourists floated high above the sky in Luxor, Egypt. Surrounded by golden light and ancient wonders, it was meant to be a peaceful sunrise balloon ride and a highlight of their visit. But what began as a tranquil flight suddenly turned into a horror show when a fire broke out in midair. Within moments, the balloon became an inferno before rapidly crashing into a sugarcane field. 19 lives were lost in what would become the deadliest hot air balloon accident in history. This tragedy would send shockwaves through Egypt's tourism industry, raise urgent safety questions, and prompt major safety protocol changes in aerial sightseeing all around the world. Hot air ballooning had become one of Luxor's most iconic tourist attractions by the early 2010s. With clear morning skies and panoramic views of archaeological treasures such as the Valley of Kings and the Nile River, balloon rides drew thousands of tourists each year. Initially, to begin with, ballooning was loosely regulated, but after several incidents between 2007 and 2009, including one in 2009 where 16 tourists were left injured, authorities prompted tighter restrictions. Flights were temporarily suspended, pilot training was upgraded, and maintenance requirements were formalized. However, the 2011 Egyptian revolution disrupted nearly all aspects of national infrastructure, including tourism and civil aviation oversight. As visitor numbers plummeted, operators began cutting costs to save money at the expense of safety. Maintenance routines were delayed, old equipment remained in use, and basic safety standards were weakened. The company involved in the 2013 crash, Sky Cruise, had previously been warned about its safety practices. Notably, the same balloon involved in the crash experienced a minor fire in 2011. Despite the incident, the balloon returned to service. The aircraft, registered SU-283, was a Spanish-made Ultramagnet N425. It featured multiple fuel tanks and could carry more than 20 passengers, and by early 2013, it had logged several hundred flight hours. The pilot, Momin Murad, was 29 years old and experienced. He had held a valid license and had passed routine checks. On the morning flight were tourists from Japan, the United Kingdom, France, Hungary, Hong Kong, and South Korea, along with one Egyptian tour guide. They had signed up for the popular sunrise ride, a sincere aerial tour that promised unforgettable views. Instead, their flight would become one of the most harrowing aviation disasters in Egyptian history. The balloon launched at around 7 a.m. from a sugarcane field on the western side of Luxor. The conditions were promising, and alongside several other balloons, it ascended slowly over the countryside as the sun rose. However, moments before it touched down on the ground, witnesses on board and nearby balloons reported hearing a loud hissing sound, and the flames quickly erupted inside the basket. Pressurized propane escaped in a fine spray and ignited near the burner. The fire engulfed the floor of the basket and climbed the side walls. 3 people, including the pilot, jumped from the balloon as it was just meters off the ground. And with this, their exit from the aircraft destabilized it, causing it to rise again, and the fire intensified. As the balloon ascended to about 300 feet, the fire spread to the suspension cables and the balloon's envelope. The pilot also survived but suffered severe burns. The balloon eventually collapsed and crashed into a nearby sugarcane field, erupting in a final fireball on impact. Eyewitnesses described seeing a flaming object fall from the sky, with debris scattered across the crash zone. Emergency services reached the scene quickly, but 19 people were already dead. These victims included 9 from Hong Kong, 4 from Japan, 2 from the United Kingdom, 2 from France, 1 from Hungary, and the Egyptian tour guide. In the following days after the crash, all hot air balloon flights over Luxor were suspended and ballooning was placed under regulatory control. Egypt, who was already struggling with political unrest, now faced fears over travel safety as the crash had dominated international news. Adding to this, tour operators across Europe and Asia had cancelled balloon rides and rerouted tours. The Egyptian Aviation Authority released its final report on the crash on the 7th of January 2014. Consisting of 219 pages, the report blamed a leak in the fuel line connected to the balloon's burner. a fuel line which had been showing signs of damage since 2005. The report also noted that inspection records were incomplete and that Sky Cruise had a poor safety history. The investigators came to a conclusion, stating that the fire was entirely preventable. A combination of mechanical failure, insufficient emergency protocol, and poor regulatory enforcement led to the disaster. The report included 24 specific safety recommendations targeting balloon design, maintenance protocols, operator oversight, and pilot certification. Families of the victims were flown in to identify remains and attend repatriation services. In Hong Kong and Japan, national mourning was declared for the victims. Some balloon companies demanded that flights resume, citing economic devastation and thousands of local jobs at risk. On the other hand, many called for stricter enforcement and improved training, and by April 2013, balloon flights resumed under new, more stringent safety rules. Operators were now required to replace all agent fuel systems, install fire suppression equipment, have regular emergency drills, offer passengers clear safety briefings before each flight, and undergo random inspections by aviation officials. Sky Cruise had its license suspended and was later allowed to resume flights under heavy national and international scrutiny. The pilot, Momin Murad, was not criminally charged, though he was hospitalized for several weeks due to burns and psychological trauma. The tourism industry in Luxor suffered heavy lasting damage. Balloon bookings dropped sharply in the months following the crash, and some companies never fully recovered. The Luxor balloon disaster of 2013 remains the deadliest accident of its kind in the history of hot air ballooning. Its consequences of the crash was felt far beyond Egypt's borders, and in the wake of the crash, ballooning regulations were tightened not only in Egypt, but also in other tourist destinations known for aerial rides. Countries like Turkey, Myanmar, and even the United States reviewed their own safety standards and training practices. In Egypt, oversight mechanisms were overhauled, annual recertifications became mandatory, and equipment replacement timelines were enforced. Pilots now undergo simulation-based emergency training, and passengers receive thorough safety briefings before every flight. Commemorations continue in countries that lost citizens, and in Hong Kong and Japan, families have held annual memorials. In France and the United Kingdom, tributes were made by travel agencies and local governments. The disaster led to greater awareness about the risks of unregulated tourism experiences, particularly in regions with weak oversight or ongoing political instability. Although ballooning eventually resumed in Luxor, it did so much under a heavy safety framework, one born from tragedy. The morning of February 26, 2013, marked a turning point in aviation tourism, forcing the industry to reckon with its vulnerabilities and responsibilities.